Greetings, fellow humans. My name is Alistair Lord. I am the Renaissance Yorkshireman. Today I'm here with a friend of mine, Ricardo Delgado, to talk about his experience of English learning. So we first met at the Spanish language exchange in York, where we both live. And so when we first met, we always spoke in Spanish, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and Ricardo's experience of learning English has some similarities with my experience of learning Spanish. So we both grew up monolingual, and then we learned our respective languages, later on. So do you want to tell me a little bit about your background with learning English? How old you were when you started, and
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. I learned English when I was around 14, 15, started. In the school, of course, especially in Mexican public education, the English level, it's not great at all. So I remember having in one whole year, having around 1.5 months of actually classes. The rest we didn't have any teacher. So basically the last month was intensive, try to resolve few pages of the book, and after a quick exam we passed basically. And of course in that way I didn't learn that much. Late on the year on life, so I started learning more in the high school equivalent.
Right.
So, and I was quite basic as well. So, but in some point late in life, I had the opportunity to live for a little bit in Montreal in Canada, which over there was helpful, my really rustic English. But of course over there is mainly French speak. So I had to start learning French and helping me a little bit with that basic English I had. So from there it was learning a bit both of them, but mainly practice my English.
Right.
And with with French and Spanish, there are more similitudes. So with pronunciation change, of course, a bit different, but a lot of cognates.
Cognates,
sorry. Yeah, that's right. So that roughly, and after, of course, I moved to New Zealand, which is an English-speaker country.
Right. So how old were you when you were in Montreal?
I was already, I was around 23.
So
23.
Would you say that you became fluent while you were living in Montreal?
Yes, but actually I felt was more improved my French than my English. But yeah, so at some point I felt quite confident to keep a conversation, and sometimes of course the accent and pronunciation wasn't of course right, so people were really helpful all the time, so sorry, excuse me, repeat again, and some people of course say, oh sorry, do you mind try to correct me. I said no, I full appreciate that because of course I learn from my mistakes,
right?
And so yeah, I'm not the kind of person I took in a wrong way to offend it or feel a bit upset, because no, it's a learning.
Right. So you were open to people correcting your English and helping you.
Yes,
with that kind of thing.
definitely, yes. It's all the time, just open to.
So, how long would you say that it took you from when you first arrived in Montreal to when you felt that you could have fairly normal and fluent conversations in English?
I think probably I could say around 8 months. I would say 8 to 10 months. Yeah, because of course when I was saying about when I learned on the school English, so was few years with no using at all, living, working, and in Mexico, no chance to practice. So it's when I moved out from Mexico, and in that point is when I start.
And you were 23 then, did you say?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I started learning Spanish when I was 21, and I did 1 year at university. So I was doing, I think, about 6 hours a week for 3 10-week terms. So, after 9 months, I knew the basics, things like the weather, time, basic verb forms and stuff. And then I went to Mexico, and in my case, it was about 6 months after I'd been in Mexico. I remember I had to leave because of my visa. So I went to Cuba for 2 weeks, and I found that all of a sudden nobody spoke English. Whereas when I was living in Merida, I knew quite a lot of people who could speak English.
Yes.
So it was easy to switch between Spanish and English and not have the chance to really get that fluency. But when I was in Cuba for 2 weeks, nobody spoke English. And I suddenly realized that actually I could hold a conversation in Spanish. So for me, you know, that kind of breakthrough point was really obvious because, you know, there was a change of countries. But did you feel that you had some kind of breakthrough time when you were in Montreal, that, like, you know, there was like 1 month you didn't feel confident, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, a different month, you were confident?
Yes, I think was as well helping because at the beginning I was living with people which just speak in Spanish, so I was all the time just Spanish, go out of the door and just try always English and of course or French. But once I moved out and I was sharing a place with people who just speak French or English in their case as well, so is when I start like feeling more the improvement in that aspect. So, yeah.
Right. So, in similar to me, it was getting away from that, moving out of your comfort zone,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Not having Spanish speakers around you.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Without, not because I didn't want it. It's just unconscious. I say, okay, so probably it's better. The place I moved, it was a little bit more central, so the location was better. So I would say decide to move it out from that flat. So and I found with sharing a place with someone, just basically all the time in English or French, which
Right.
that helped me a lot, especially in French.
Right. And how is your French?
I think I think it's not that great now because I hadn't speak since.
Right,
Since,
right.
So yeah. So.
So, when did you move to England?
Oh, I moved 2013.
Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you've been in England like 10 years now.
10 years, yeah.
Right. And so when you first arrived, you could already speak pretty fluent English.
But yeah. Yes, it's just more too used to the accents.
Right. So how did you find the accent? I mean, have you always been in York, or have you been in other places?
No, just about Leeds for a year, a little bit, maybe a year and a half. But yes, it's just mainly the North Yorkshire accent.
Right.
I'm just.
You're used to Yorkshire
Yeah,
English.
yes, what is
Right. Right. But you don't have like a Yorkshire accent. You still have quite, I would say, quite a Mexican accent.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think it will be hard to to completely eliminate it. And it's one thing I would say they try to keep the essence as well. So like obviously people when they meet me they would say I'm no native English speaker, of course, but it's just as well like to try to keep that part of my identity with having
Right.
an accent.
Right. No, I understand. So, if you were already fluent when you arrived, I mean, do you feel that your English has developed a lot or not that much since you've been in England?
I think definitely yes. So it's just more like a skill, like I don't know, writing, for example. So
Right.
That's yeah. So I don't vocabulary. Yeah. So it's quite more correct. Tense. Yeah. So it's just in general. Yeah. Definitely been developing. And every time I find always like okay. So it's different ways to say one thing. So different. Yeah. It's all constantly.
Right. And your girlfriend, who's English,
My
she
wife.
speaks. Sorry,
Well,
sorry.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
wife is English, and she speaks Spanish as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, normally, do you normally speak English? You normally speak Spanish, or like on a Tuesday you speak Spanish, or Wednesday you speak English? I mean,
It's really a mix of both. So when we are on our own, sometimes I speak to her in English and she replies in Spanish. Sometimes it's vice versa, or one sentence. It's like a bit like could be like Spanglish.
Right, right.
But this, of course, just between us. Once we have some friends over or family, so just switch, of course, in English.
Right.
But yeah, quite a lot. Often it's just I don't realize if I speak to her in English or Spanish. It's just
right,
automatically.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I used to teach English in Spain, and you know, my students knew that I could speak Spanish, and sometimes they would do this Spanglish thing with me. But when I'm teaching, and I've taught Spanish to English kids as well, I like to keep it either it's Spanish or it's English. But I know what you mean when you're in a kind of social situation and you're with people who are bilingual in English and Spanish. Often it's just easier to do this kind of Spanglish. But as I say, I mean, you know, as a teacher,
yes.
as a language teacher, I don't approve of it in a certain manner. Yes. But in social situations, it's quite functional, right?
Yeah, it is. And as I say, it for both of us works quite well. So, and as long as we don't make other people feel like a bit laid out from what's going on with what we are saying.
Right.
So that's the main thing. And yeah, in theory, like last few weeks ago, we went to Spain, and she said, "Okay, I will try to practice my Spanish all the time." Yeah, that's fine. And in some point, we realized I was speaking to her in English, and she was, "Oh no, but," and she was back in English as well, and she was realizing, "Okay, actually, we speak in English now a little bit more than I should."
Right.
So I want to keep practice my Spanish perfect. And after, we realized and say, "Okay, just Spanish. Okay, but." In some moments was like really unconscious. She was replying me in English, or
right.
I was mentioned something. When she was like, "Sorry, what's?" But this is not because she didn't understand. She didn't hear maybe what I was saying, and
right.
straight away for me, say, you repeat, but in English.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but it's one thing.
So, in your experience of learning English, is there anything? The vocabulary, the accent, the grammar that you've had problems with, or that you find difficult?
I think grammar.
Right.
I think it's I think grammar. So I believe because when I learned was more like day by day as going, so always talking, so making huge mistakes. But after repeat for weeks, months, and now of course years, so I learned. And the grammar, of course, I have been taking proper lessons, but still, like, it's not my strength,
right.
the grammar. So yeah,
not your cup of tea.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea.
So, is there anything particular about is there any particular grammar point in English that you find difficult, or something that is weird for you?
Oh, I think sometimes could be like auxiliary verbs or
auxiliary verbs,
right. Yes, or irregular verbs as well. So
right.
I just get sometimes still confused. So I believe they are the main issues I find to keep learning. So, to keep practicing.
Right, and as someone who learn English as an adult rather than as a child. I mean, is there any sort of advice that you would offer Spanish speakers who are trying to learn English?
Well, definitely the earliest you learn, the better. So in general, I felt when you are younger, so your brain is a little bit more suitable to absorb like knowledge, vocabulary, and so I think it's much easier to start learning any language, or pretty much nearly anything when you are younger than a little bit of adults. So I have a few friends which the kids, they are and parents from different backgrounds, different languages speak. So the kids, they raising with 3 language, maybe 7-8 years they can speak. 3 languages, which is great.
Yeah. Great if you have that kind of background.
Yes.
And your family in Mexico, do they speak English?
Just my sister. That's my but is the only one. My mom doesn't. And,
right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ricardo.
it's
it was
fine.
lovely speaking to you.
Oh, you are very welcome.